Access to the Monte zone will be granted shortly. Please stand by. Access to the Monte zone will be granted shortly. Please stand by. Access to the Monte zone will be granted shortly. Please stand by. Access to the Monte zone will be granted shortly. Please stand by. Access to the Monte zone will be granted shortly. Please stand by. access to the Monte zone will be granted shortly. Please stand by.
Good evening, everyone. It's Friday night. It's 8 o'clock. It's the Monte Zone. I hope. Welcome, G. How you doing?
I'm good. Sorry, I didn't realise that we were on.
We're on.
There was a big pause then. I was like, oh, hello. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Thanks for tuning in. Hi, Monte.
Good evening, Mr. G. At the moment, it's telling me things are okay. So, touch wood. Have your 4-leaf clovers on standby. And
I've got plenty of wood in this cabin to touch.
you do.
So,
You're quite literally surrounded by wood.
I'm covered in wood.
You're covered in wood. Yes. Hopefully people will join us this evening as we've kind of messed the timings and the days around for this one. But yeah, hopefully people will be able to come on and say hello. And I see we got Dan M. And Dan M is here this evening.
D-Bot was in earlier.
Good evening to D-Bot. Yes. Good evening. Yes.
Have we got Smiler?
She'll be here shortly. There you go. As you say, so she appears.
She's got a black clover.
She has got a black clover. Yes, it's an anime we've been watching with our dinner. Yes. Good evening, everyone. And it is Friday night, and it's the Monte Zone. A week late. Ironically, our episode of the Missing 411 last week went missing. So here we are again.
And hopefully this one doesn't go missing. We're keeping our fingers crossed.
Hopefully. I think I've figured out my router problems, and fingers crossed this all goes well this evening. Yes, so we're talking the Missing 411, which we started off last week. Last week,
yeah,
we kind of covered some general famous missing person cases in Amelia Earhart and the other one.
Jimmy Hoffa.
Jimmy Hoffa, that's the one. Yes, Jimmy, who's probably under a concrete high-rise somewhere. Hoffa. Yes. Yep. So we talked about some of those missing, those celebrity missing cases. So we thought this week we'll concentrate on the missing 411 cases. We'll
cases, yeah.
We'll start off where we left off.
Just before we get into that, though, as we were, I mean, with all the technical issues that we had last week, I think it still came through. And I put it on the Facebook page as well that we were really hoping to get to 100 subscribers. That was the target, and we wanted your guys' help to do that by spreading the word. And I am pleased to say that we got to where we are now. I think it's 81. 80.
Oh no, I think it was like 80. Was it 89?
So we had a really good boost and a really good jump.
Yeah.
So if anybody was helping with that, thank you very much. If you can remember, I'm just doing it right now. Please like this.
82. Sorry, I interrupted you.
That's all right. That's all right. 82 is even better than what I thought. It was
Hmm.
81, so it's maybe popped up one. But it was a really good jump because I think last week we were at 70. So thank you for anybody if you played a part in that.
Yes.
And don't forget to like this video right this second. I've just liked it just now. And if you haven't subscribed, don't forget to subscribe. And as usual, I can't have a Monty Zone episode without plugging the Facebook page. And just to mention, if you haven't seen it yet, I uploaded the episode 2 of G Star's Vault this week, which is on something from Mars Perseverance rover. So if you haven't seen that already, please go and check that out. And I also uploaded a link to a good video for Amelia Earhart, where some of you might have missed that section of last week's show. So go and check out the Facebook page. We'll put the link in the description.
Great job, G. Great job as always. Yes. Very good.
Gotta plug it.
And whilst you were talking there, you might have accidentally heard some vocals in the background. I went and liked it as well. Yes. So yes, thank you everybody who have subscribed in the past week. We really do appreciate it. And good evening, Hydro. Hydro's on and joining us this evening. Good evening to you, sir.
Nice.
Hydro won our Fortnite competition a couple of weeks ago on the live stream and won himself 1,000 V-Bucks that I'm going to have to pass over at some point.
Wow.
So congratulations,
Hydro.
Congratulations to Hydro. Yes, so the missing 411. Now, you've done some good work here, G, and you've... At the beginning last week, I generally covered what I knew about what made a missing case in America, a missing 411 candidate, and you've made a pretty cool little poster.
Yeah, well, I had to make it because
there's nothing out there. I couldn't find anything either now.
If you go and Google it, it's something that stood out to me when I watched the... In fact, I just found out today that the only documentary that I've watched is actually the second one, not the first one, because the first one was released in 2017.
Yeah, you watched the Hunters one, was it?
Yeah, I watched the Hunters one. But what stood out to me when I was watching that documentary is how they categorize it. But you can't find that anywhere online. That's gone missing. So I made this one.
So yeah, made by G Star himself. So here are some of the points that make a missing 411 case. Point of separation. So I think that's about the fact that people go missing, in front of people, it's
there's a pinpointed bit where they know that they went missing.
Yeah, it's gone.
There's a point where they've
gone.
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, I think it's worthwhile pointing out that I don't think there's something like, how many is there? 1, 2, 3, 4. I think it's something like it has to have 10 of the criteria to be a missing 411 case. Not all missing 411 cases have all 12 criteria, but they have to have 9 or 10 or something like that to be classed as a missing 411. So yeah,
basically. These are the common things that are found in these cases. These are the things that come up time and time again. So the time of disappearance. What's the general time that they disappear? I mean, I think it's during midday or just when the sun's at the highest, and it's people shouldn't really get lost.
Yeah, well, again, I think it's that within their investigations, they can point out when the time was that the person went missing. So that's they've got a time for the disappearance, whereas in some cases, you just don't know when they actually went missing.
Yep, canines can't track, so they either come to a dead end or they don't pick up the scent at all. It's often around boulder fields. That features quite prominently in a lot of the missing 411 cases. They're found in areas that were previously searched. And when we say found, we don't always mean alive, but the remains are found in an obvious place where many hundreds of people have looked. It's often near water, ponds, creeks, rivers, that sort of thing. Hello. don't go on my StreamYard. That was it. There's often a weather event. Do you know what the weather event is?
Yeah, well, in terms of there's a significant, like whether it be a storm, whether it be some sort of unusual weather pattern, and again, it doesn't always have to have a weather. That can be one of the missing criteria as long as it's got like 10 of them. But yeah, it's things like storms or snowfall, like extra snowfall, or anything that would be considered like a specific event in the weather.
Yeah. Missing clothes. Is that because when they're found, they have missing clothes, or the only partial clothes are found?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's both, isn't it? Because in a lot of the cases, they haven't found the person, they haven't found any remains, but they found pieces of clothing, or they found the remains, but they're missing clothing. And sometimes that's not all their clothing, it's just certain odd pieces. Like on some cases, it's like they're just missing their shoes, or, so it's a bit unusual.
Disability or illness. So quite often that the person missing has some sort of disability, like they're hard of hearing or asthmatic, or something is up with them. The cause of death, why the person died when they disappeared, is often unknown. And the geographical clustering. So it happens around these particular places in the wilderness in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, it's worthwhile pointing out. I think you can find it online. There's a sort of map for missing 411 cases, and you'll see that what they mean by that is they're sort of kind of clustered together, not all in one place, like they're spread out. But then you'll see that, if they mark one with each red dot, and these are mostly in the States, to be clear, but it's all over the States, but they're clustered around. The one that I find really interesting is they're found in an area often that's previously been searched. That's very strange, because in all these cases, the first responders would be search and rescue and things like the police, etc. So in most of these cases, there's been like significant investigations and searches gone on. In some cases, those searches have gone on for a couple of years, and they keep searching and searching, and they've searched one particular area because when these search and rescue do it, they do it very methodically, very mathematically, so they know exactly where they've covered. And what will happen is they'll find either items of clothing or dare I say it, body parts. I mean, I think we forgot to mention at the beginning, that some of the information that we're going through tonight might be quite distressing and upsetting to some. But yeah, they found body parts, but in places where all of these responders and search and rescue have already searched. So unless they've been really bad at their job, but it's such a repetitive thing that's happened quite a lot in these cases.
Yeah, I forgot to mention I did it last week, didn't I? But I didn't do it this week. It's disclaimer: some of the stories contained in tonight's episode may contain graphic material or harrowing stories. So just be warned.
Especially if you've got kids about.
Yeah. So yes, that's if you've got any questions, chat in live. If you've got any questions about missing 411 or anything that we're talking about, or if you know of any cases yourself, please chip in chat and let us know. We'll happily talk to you about it.
That's what we're here for.
Smiler said there was a smidge of buffering. But
yes, there was. I didn't want to say anything because I just wanted to let it play out, because it's just like if you don't acknowledge it, it's not there.
It's not there. Yeah, I tell you, they just don't like us talking about the missing. That's what it is. It's
So when we finished off last week's attempted go at this episode, Monte was finishing off with a story, and because of all the technical issues, I wasn't listening 100%, but I was listening enough that it made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. It was one of the missing 411 cases that's kind of, got an element of strangeness to it. So I was saying to him, look, because most of the guys that tuned in last week probably didn't really get it fully, and it was all cutting in and out, that we should start with that one tonight, and Monty should kick us off with that story and go through it again.
I've got my beer this evening. I've got a beer.
Nice.
It's Friday. Right, people. This is the first story. If you managed to make out what I was saying last week between all the buffering and all that, you might have heard this already, but I'm going to start off with this one. It's a pretty good little story, and these are all true. This is all real events, and it happened on the 29th of April 2001, and it centers around a six-year-old girl called Haley Zager. Now, Haley was going for a walk in Arkansas in the Upper Buffalo Wilderness. She was hiking there with her grandparents. They were out on a day trip. They were hiking through Buffalo Park up to a bluff to have some lunch or whatever and look at the view, and then hike back again. So that they got to the bluff, they admired the view, and then on the way back, Haley spots a waterfall. And she asks her grandparents, can we go down to the bottom of the waterfall and see the waterfall? But the grandparents have a look at it, and the only way to get down to the bottom of it was to climb down a tree that was conjoined onto the side of the path. And they're like, no, Haley, we're walking back to the car now. We don't have time to go down, climb down this tree and see the bottom of the waterfall. So Haley, being a 6-year-old, she decides to throw a tantrum, and she sits herself on the floor and says, well, I'm not moving then. You're going to have to carry me home. And the grandparents are like, no, Haley, we're not carrying you. You're going to have to walk back with us. Now, don't spoil the day. So she refuses. So the grandparents do the things that a lot of parents and grandparents do in these sort of situations. They're like, right, okay, well, we'll just walk on without you. So they continue walking off down the path towards the car park. They keep looking over their shoulder to make sure that Haley stays in view. And after they've gone a certain distance down the path, and they're starting to get a little further away from Haley, Haley's like, well, I don't want to be left in the forest by myself. So she gets up and goes, okay, all right, wait for me. So she starts walking after her grandparents. So the grandparents are like, well, thankfully, finally, she's now following us. So they continue slowly walking on. And then after a while, Haley seems to be dawdling and dragging her heels again because she's not happy about how all this has transpired. So she's walking along the path, shuffling along, and the grandparents realize they're starting to get further ahead of her again. And so they keep looking over her shoulder, and they walk a little bit further, and they look over their shoulder to see that she's still there. All this time, Haley's kind of shuffling her feet, looking up and seeing her grandparents, and then shuffling her feet and looking up and seeing her grandparents, and shuffling her feet. And then she goes to look up and see her grandparents, but all she sees is trees. And at the same time, the grandparents at the front, they say that they were looking over her shoulder and she was there, and then they looked over their shoulder, and Haley was gone. And they start shouting her name. They can't find her. They spend the next hour or so searching all the area around where they last saw Haley, but they can't find her anywhere. And they're starting to panic, She's not coming. They don't hear her. They don't see her. So after about an hour of searching, they decide they're going to go back to the car park and raise the alarm. So they find some people who help them. They contact the police, the fire department, mountain search and rescue, anyone they can think of. And about 250 people joined the search for Haley that evening. And they have canine units, search dogs. They have helicopters in the sky with night vision and thermal imaging. and they're all looking for Haley. And this search continues for the next 48 hours. 2 days goes by, and there's no progress. The dog team, hi Ronald, good evening, sir. And good evening, Karen. Sorry, I didn't see you come in chat. So the dog team, they take some of Haley's dress-up princess dresses, and they cut them up into strips, and they dish those strips out to the canine units to get her scent. And one of the canine units gets onto the trail of her scent, and they go off. And unfortunately, that trail takes them to the road, where they lose the scent. So then the search team think, well, this is either good news or bad news. She's made her way to a road, and she's been picked up by someone. So she's either about to turn up at a hospital or a police station, safe and well, or something bad's happened to her, you know. And unfortunately, she doesn't turn up anywhere. So another day goes by, and we're some over 51 hours into the search now. And two old guys, I didn't write their names down. They're going for a day trek with their mules. They're taking their mules through the forest, as they do most weeks. And they thought, well, we're going out for a walk with our mules. We might as well. We've heard about Haley's missing, this 6-year-old girl. We'll keep an eye out, just in case we happen to see something. Even though they're some 2 miles away from the search area that the search teams were looking in. And so they're going through the forest, and lo and behold, they come across a stream where there's a 6-year-old girl sitting on the side of the stream, dangling her feet in the cold water. And they ask, are you Haley? And she confirms that she's Haley, and she's fit and well. She has a couple of scratches on her arms from walking through bush, but apart from that, she suffers no.
How many days was this?
This was in total over 51 hours.
51
so
hours.
About heading towards 3 days.
It's a very, very strange part of the story, isn't it? That she's been missing for 51 hours, and they find her sitting next to a stream, dangling her feet in the stream. It's a bit
completely fine, just happy. So she gets taken to the local hospital, and she's interviewed by newspapers, and a program called Dateline US picked it up, Dateline, and so they run a story on her and her story. And the story that she tells in this program is that she saw her grandparents up in front. She looked down, she looked up, and there were just trees all around her. She said she seemed like she was no longer on a path, but she was just in the middle of the woods. She looked all around, and all she could see was trees. So she started walking, and she saw that there was a hill. So she thought, well, I'll just keep walking up the hill, and I might be able to see my grandparents from a higher place, because all I can see is trees. So she walks up this hill, and she finds a bluff. I don't know if it was the one, they don't say if it was the one they visited for lunch, or it was another bluff, but that she finds a bluff. And she can't see anything from there either. And by the time she got up to the top of this bluff, it was dark, it was nighttime. So she falls asleep on this bluff. And they ask her to point out on the map. And this bluff is right smack bang in the middle of the search area that the search team was searching that evening. You know, there would have been helicopters in the sky with lights. 250 people in the area, all shouting her name. You know, they've got thermal imaging, night cameras. They were literally looking at that bluff and they saw nothing. So it's like, how could she have hidden under their nose without them connecting in some way? It's very strange. But she says she was on that bluff, and an imaginary friend came to her. And she never had an imaginary friend before this incident, and she never had an imaginary friend after it. And this imaginary friend was a 4-year-old girl called Alicia. And this 4-year-old imaginary friend, then the following morning when she woke up, helped her off the bluff. The bluff was apparently surrounded by a boulder field that was steep into the valley below, and she said she nearly fell several times, but her imaginary friend caught her and stopped her from falling, and shown her the way down to the bottom, and then shown her along this creek to where a cave was, where she could safely rest, away from animals and things. And inside the cave, she met a caterpillar with a white spot on its head that she called Spot. And there she hung out for the next 2 days, 2 nights, just chilling out in the mouth of this cave, and until the 2 old guys with their mules found her. And some people that knew the area really well, watching this Dateline US program and the story that Haley told, realized that 23 years earlier, on that exact bluff that she fell asleep on, a 4-year-old girl called Elena died on that exact spot 23 years earlier. I know that the imaginary friend was called Alicia and the girl that died was called Elena, but it's still really spooky. So there you go. That was my first.
It's freaky. I mean, I listened to enough of it last week that, as I said, it made the hairs on, especially when you said that end bit, it still makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. But I started really thinking about, well, how does this happen? This, and you can present certain scenarios, I guess, but there wasn't anything that I could present that would explain it all, so the part in the story where you mentioned she bends down to tie up her shoelace, and then she stands up and she's surrounded by trees, right?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, I think there is actually a condition for this. And I remember, when I was a kid, sometimes you could get into such a daydream sometimes, kids do daydream a lot, that you go so into your daydream and what you're imagining, because as kids, our imagination is so much stronger than it is as adults, and you get lost in it. And then you would find, oh, what was where am I, what am I, because you were in your mystery world. So I started thinking, well, maybe that's what happened. And she, if you were there standing watching her, you would have observed that she had gone into almost a hypnotic state and walked to another part of the woods, and then she becomes more conscious and more aware of her surroundings, and that's what she doesn't remember the bit in between. But even if you said it was that, then how does it explain so many other, that doesn't explain why she supposedly met this girl, unless she's still continuing to have this imagination. But for a girl she was 6, right? That's, she was 6,
she was 6, yes.
Yeah. So a girl of 6 to survive for 51 hours in the woods by herself.
This is the American wilderness as well.
Yeah. And to have gone to a cave and all it with just a scratch on it. It just, there's so many things that kind of, very strange.
Yeah.
Just trying to read this story that Dan M's sharing on chat.
Yes, right. Yeah. The weirdest thing for me, I mean, I can, it's strange how the grandparents, couldn't find her, or she could. I think maybe if she was so annoyed with them, and then she originally heard them calling her name, but was hiding in the bush, and then didn't want to admit that she run off and hid. I can imagine how that all kicked off initially, with a 6-year-old. I don't understand how she was in that area, and all the dog teams and the helicopters and the thermal imaging, they couldn't see her, that literally the teams walked past where she was camping for the night and nobody could see her or she could hear them, That's the weird part for me.
It's a cool story that Dan M shared. Just to mention, guys, though, let us know what you think of that story, and if you've got any thoughts or ideas. But we'll come back to Dan M's story in a minute. I've still got more to talk about on this one. But so, you mentioned that Haley said, or as part of the story, it states that Haley had met this imaginary friend, and she'd never had an imaginary friend before or an imaginary friend after. Who described it as an imaginary friend? Did Haley describe it as an imaginary friend, or did the person who's writing the report?
Haley described it as an imaginary friend.
So Haley knew that this friend wasn't real.
Yeah.
She labeled it imaginary friend.
Yeah. That's the way she
weird.
processed it.
That's weird, isn't it?
Hmm.
Because, it kind of, going back to what I was saying earlier, it kind of gives then a sense that she's aware of her imagination and the concept of imagination, and probably be able to, it would then lean towards the fact that she's able to discern the difference between imagination and reality.
Yeah, I haven't seen like the clips of it or anything. Haley now has a YouTube channel with a video on it where she recounts the story of her disappearance herself. So, yeah, if anybody wants to check it out, you can go to her.
We'll need to put the link in the description.
Yeah, we'll put the link in the description. I think she's only got like 1 or 2 videos on her channel which just talks about this missing case. She said people are always asking her about it, and she's had to recount the story over and over again because everybody's interested. So she thought she'd just put it on YouTube. So then if anybody is interested, she can say, well, you can go watch it on YouTube. Save her having to talk about it all the time. But yeah, there you go. It's Haley Zager is her name. Yes.
So how long ago was this?
That was in 2001.
So she would be...
She's 25 now.
25, yeah.
Yeah.
Be interesting to see some of the original footage from the news at the time, I guess, and what was being said then. But yeah, that's a really good one to kick off with. Yeah. Very strange. And as I said, let us know what you guys think in chat. Have you got any thoughts on what to put an explanation on her missing case?
It's odd. It's certainly got some odd parts to it. But I mean, it's a mystery, isn't it? I mean, the names don't match up with the girl, the 4-year-old that died at that spot, and her imaginary friend. It might have been that she just, as a coping mechanism, she conjured up, because she was in shock or whatever of being left in the wilderness, that she conjured up this imaginary friend, and just happened to stumble upon this cave. This cave was 2 miles outside of the search area, so over 2 miles away from she went missing in the wilderness, which is a long 2 miles. So she certainly wandered. But yes, it's water. I don't know whether she drank from the stream, or I assume she did, but it's how she survived. I mean, with no ill effects. How she survived. Just want to talk about Dan's case. So Dan M in chat. I'll just read it out, just in case anybody's got any questions. I'd like to read this case out. So this is a case about leading seaman Timothy McCall, who was serving on board HMS Westminster, which was a Type 23 frigate. He was serving on board the Middle East and disappeared in 2012 at 2 a.m. at night after a drinking session.
This is in Dubai.
It was in Dubai. I think they were actually docked at Port Rashid. Port Rashid in Dubai.
Have you already been Googling the story, have you?
No, I just knew it.
All right.
No, I did.
Liar, liar, pants on fire.
Yeah. But he was never found. And there was a massive search by the looks of things. With divers and all sorts of things.
Thermal imaging equipment.
Yeah. But the official story from the Ministry of Defence is that he drowned. But he was never found.
There's a theory that it's that the taxi he went in, obviously out on the drinking session, took him out to the desert and murdered him, but it was never investigated properly. And then Dad said it's very sad.
The thing is, out in the desert, there are literally towns and cities and all sorts of things that get lost. It's very easy to hide a body out there.
Yeah, bit of a strange one. Certainly not a missing 411 though, because he didn't mention any boulder field.
No boulder fields. It was certainly by water.
Certainly by water. Yeah. Well, is it? Yeah, of course it was.
It's on a ship. Sorry, I shouldn't laugh.
Well, not necessarily. He might have just been stationed to that one, but he wasn't. Oh no, he was serving on board. So it's close to water. Potential weather. I don't know whether there was a weather event like a Dubai sandstorm going on at that time.
Well, it's certainly sunny.
But thanks for sharing, Dan. Really interesting one. I'll have to look into that.
I've been out on a Type 23 frigate. HMS Cumberland.
Yes, you got very seasick, didn't you?
I did. Yes, I spent about a total of about a month on board HMS Cumberland out in the Atlantic.
Not being funny, but military. I don't want to say sailing because it's not really sailing, but military. Time on the ocean is very different from commercial passenger traveling a lot of the times in terms of how rough and
they're like where like cruise ships and ferries and things have like ballast and anti-roll mechanisms and things like that. Frigates are like giant speedboats. They're like massive speedboats. And they're very agile. So you just get thrown about all day. It's not fun. I don't find it very much fun. But there you go. You can stand in the middle. There's like a main corridor that goes through the middle of the frigate. There's like the NAFI, the shop and things that you can buy things, and you can stand in it when you're out to sea, and you can watch the ship twist. You can't see from one end of the corridor to the other because you can see the ship twisting in the sea.
Oh my gosh. Not for me.
Yeah. There you go. Yes, thank you, Dan. Right, what's your first story this evening then, Mr. G-Stone?
My first missing 411 case. Some people might have heard of this one, but it's a bit similar to yours in terms of I'm warming everybody up to, I've got quite a shall we say, slightly upsetting, horrific, mysterious case to go through later on. But this one is similar to yours, where it's not that distressing, but it's very strange. Anyway, this is the case of Danny Philippedes. In February 2018, a Canadian man by the name of Danny Philippedes was on a ski trip with friends in New York. So in the state of New York, obviously not the city of New York. It was around 2 p.m. and they had been skiing for hours. They were getting ready to go to the lodge, and Danny said he wanted to go and do another, final run before he called it a day. So the rest of the guys didn't want to go, so they went down the mountain for a lunch break. By 4 p.m., Danny was failing to return any calls or texts from the rest of the guys that he was with. And I just want to, at this point, mention that he is Danny is a veteran firefighter. He's a captain in the Canadian Fire Service, and all the people that he was with are also firefighters. It wasn't like a bachelor party or anything like that. This was a genuine, bunch of guys who are firefighters who love skiing, who went on holiday in the state of New York to go skiing. So it wasn't like a big drink fest or anything like that. So, as I said, by 4 p.m., Danny was failing to return any of his calls or texts from his friends, so they started to get concerned. They began searching for him themselves, so they went up to the slope that they knew that he was going to, and after being unable to find him, they then got themselves back down the mountainside to the lodge and let the people there at the lodge know that he was missing. A team of 130 people scoured the mountain without finding him. So, because he was a firefighter and all that sort of thing, a lot of the search and rescue and responders, really got passionate about getting involved. Now, here's the weird thing. So they didn't find anything, didn't find any evidence to explain him going missing, didn't find any clothing, any part of his skiing equipment, nothing, nada. Like the man had just up and vanished and disappeared. But here's the really weird thing. 6 days later, 6 days, Philippedes' wife receives a phone call. She didn't recognize the number, and it sounded like it was far away and it was staticky. It was Danny's voice. He was incoherent and confused, and then he hung up the phone. She called the number back and pleaded with him to call 911 for help. So he did actually end up doing that. He had no idea where he was. He just described his surroundings to his wife. I think what he had described to her was that he thought he was in a car rental car park. When the paramedics finally found him, he was still wearing all of his ski gear. And he was in need of medical assistance. However, this is one other weird thing about the case, is that they don't go massive. There's a certain area of his medical assistance that they don't really talk about. He was holding a brand new iPhone. So, this was 2018. And someone had cut his hair. But here's the thing. When the paramedics found him, he was in California, Sacramento.
How far away was that from his original?
So he was in the state of New York, which
is
on the east coast
Jesus
of America.
Christ, that's the other side of America.
Yeah. However, you can get to there with 6 days travel.
Yeah.
Not by air. Yeah, if you were, Now, there's some theories. I'm not going to go too heavily into some of the theories because I do have a video where we can see the man himself talking about his experience. The thing is, up until this day, and the reason why I want to share this video file is for everybody to, for everybody just to see like how genuine and upstanding this guy is. But there's a theory, especially from him as well. He's when he was taken to the police and this was all investigated, he has stated that he remembers something about a truck driver. So there's a quite a strong theory that he was in. There's a truck route that runs from the state of New York. I think it's called the I-15. Dan M might know that one because he travels all around the world, and he might know what the name of the road is. Hi, Mickey, by the way. Mickey's joined us.
Hi, Mickey.
Yeah, so I-15, I think it's called, which is like a known trucker route, that takes them from the East Coast to the West Coast of America. And it's believed that he may have traveled in some sort of truck with a truck driver for those 6 days. But here's the weird thing, and I will go through this because Danny doesn't cover this in this video when he's being interviewed, but he remembers what he did is he when he started coming around, so when he first came around, he was somewhere in Sacramento, not at the airport, somewhere else. I think it was about 13 miles away from the airport in Sacramento. But he realized that he didn't have any phone or any way to contact anybody. But he realized that he had some money, he had one, I think it was bank card or credit card in his ski outfit. So he went into a shop and he bought the iPhone. He remembers buying the iPhone, but he then spent hours wandering around. Now, we could all probably lay claim to this because he wanted to phone his wife. Now, how many of us now remember mobile numbers because we're so used to it being on the device? If I asked you what your spouse's number is off by heart, would you be able to remember it? Most people wouldn't.
No.
So he wandered around for hours and hours trying to remember his wife's number and eventually remembered it. And that's when he phoned her. That's where that part of the story comes in. But then when he was on the phone to her, he was then at Sacramento Airport in the rental car park. That's where the paramedics found him. But he doesn't remember how he got those 13 miles. But he doesn't remember having his hair cut. Now, if this is a case of like a trucker doing something weird, and kind of kidnapping him and keeping him drugged up and whatever, why go to the effort of cutting somebody's hair and then letting them go? It's, there's some really strange elements to this case. But anyway, let me see if I can pull up the video and we can all hear from Danny himself. It should be coming to you now.
I mean, I'm back to work. I feel great. But, you forget about it for a few days and then someone or something jogs your memory and then you think back at it and it's still overwhelmingly shocking to that it happened. Still, I feel fortunate that I'm here, even just talking today because of all the potential things that I guess could have resulted. When I woke up and came to having it discussed with the fellows later on post week and having discussed later on with.
Can I just ask, Gary, when did this happen?
2018.
2018. Okay.
Yeah, so I think this interview's done about a year later. He's talking about when he's saying there, when I was talking to the guys, he's talking about his firefighter friends that were on holiday with him and stuff.
I wonder if he kept the hairstyle.
Huh?
I wonder if he kept the hairstyle. Or...
Don't know, but he was saying at the beginning of the video that he was glad to be at work because obviously he had to take quite a bit of time off of work to sort of deal with this whole, the weirdness and craziness of it. So he was saying at the beginning of the video that he was glad that he's back at work.
Some of the ski patrol and the New York State Police, it was someone determined that I was probably on the Kids Hill. I must have made a wrong turn, but somehow that's where I was. I wasn't in a high-level mountain area, or I was pretty well near the bottom of the hill. I didn't make it to the main lodge because I think I headed towards the car.
So he wasn't in the wilderness. He wasn't on a big slope or a thing. He was literally on the training hill.
Yeah, I mean this is all a little bit conjecture as well, because he was saying there that firefighters and stuff and the New York police force have kind of put stuff together, and it's not concrete, but yeah, that's the general feeling.
Which is adjacent to the lodge, and then with my vehicle not there, it really got a little overwhelming, and I think that's when I'm assuming, I hailed or, put my arm up or something like that just to hail a ride back into town. It was a truck.
Okay. Like a transport?
Like a transport. Okay. And I don't know if I said anything. I don't really recall having, I'm just assuming that I hailed a ride, and I'm not certain if I said anything, but I would assume that I must have said, you can get a ride or something. The doctor says, I think you had a severe head injury, and it was temporary, and everything's going to be normal for you moving forward. After 3 days, 4 days, 5th day, I think there's a lot of despair, a lot of stress on them, in the sense that it just didn't look reasonable that I would be found okay. Dad was here, Dad was gone, and wow, Dad's back. We can almost talk about anything now, in a sense that.
So he's just basically saying there that this whole experience has brought his family closer together because, they obviously went through a horrific experience. What he was playing out there is that, after he's been missing for 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, they're obviously getting, severely stressed out and despairing and stuff. So when he was reunited with them, it's, since then brought them closer together, which is great that he's being, able to pull this positive out of the experience. What's interesting about this case, though, because as I said, when I read the story and I saw then that interview, he's clearly saying that he's got some memory of a truck, that, the theory that's pulled together, and maybe it's just the way he's recounting what the doctor said, because he said that the doctor thinks that he had a head injury, but you would have thought even after 6 days that if it was that serious enough to leave him, with amnesia or something for 6 days, that surely they would have been able to, when he was recovered, that they would have done an examination on him and seen a head injury. It wouldn't be, he thinks I had, it would be, I had a head injury. But, the general theory is that he possibly may have fallen over, banged his head, got amnesia from the trauma, maybe automatic programming hailed a truck or tried to get some help and stop somebody, and then somebody picked him up, and then he spent 6 days in this truck. But when I think about that, I think, well, what truck driver would have kept a guy that's amnesia, obviously delirious or doesn't know who he is? Or why would somebody take somebody from one side of a massive country like the United States to the other side without phoning the police or flagging? There's so many weird things. And then the whole haircut thing, if it was just a case that he flagged, like maybe he took on an alternate personality, and he got really friendly with his truck driver, and he was like, my name is Bob and I live in California and I'm going to come with you. It's happened. It could happen, with head trauma, who knows? But why did the guy cut his hair, or who cut his hair? It's just very strange indeed.
Yeah. Mickey felt that maybe he did fall over and forgot who he was. That seems, as a part of the story, that seems quite plausible.
It does,
doesn't it?
But then when you go on to the rest of the story, it's like, well, hold on a minute. Either this truck driver's like, hey, I've got, a little friend with me, to entertain me for 6 days that I'm just going to keep quiet about. It's just, you wouldn't do that.
It'll be funny. That'll be a funny story.
Yeah.
Mickey says he's cancelling his snowboard trip for January.
I would. Hi, Mazza, by the way.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Hi, Maz. Oh, yeah.
I was deep in my story when you obviously came on. So
do you have a particular theory for it, G? Do you have any thoughts on?
No. Well, I would agree that the whole him having a concussion and then amnesia or some sort, but I mean, that's the most clearly obvious, or whether there was just something else to it that he's, keeping quiet, and he's very good at doing it. But that's why I wanted to share the video, because he seems like quite a genuine, he's not trying to force anything on anybody sort of like kind of guy. And he's a firefighter as well. And, he seems like a stand-up guy. So I don't think it is a case of him, he went off and had a bit of a wild time or something.
They say you don't think his family's daughter's like, Dad, I want a pony. And his mum's like, Bob, I want a new kitchen. And, and he's just like, yeah, I'm going to California for 6 days. Later.
Yeah, that's why I thought it was important to show the video, because he doesn't seem like that kind of guy. And in the bits that I was reading about this whole story online, there was a lot of various different people sort of, saying what a stand-up guy in his community as a firefighter, he's quite a hero, and he's never had anything, And he's a particularly shy guy as well. You can see he wasn't particularly comfortable on the camera, and that's the only interview that he's done on camera. So very, very strange. I mean, what do you think?
Oh, yeah, just don't know, do you? It could be any one of those things, couldn't it? I was thinking maybe he did fall over on the slopes, and maybe just in a daze came back and fell asleep in the back of a van that happened to be driving to California. Nobody realized he was there to begin with, And then by the time he was noticed, he was like halfway there, and they were like, "Oh well, we're heading in this direction now, mate."
I mean, the other thing is that he could have been picked up by a trucker who had like a bit of a drinking problem and forgot that he was in the back, and had forgotten that he picked him up and drove him all the way to. But there's still the whole couple of details, like his hair being cut.
Yeah. You're obsessed by the whole cutting of the hair thing, aren't you?
Well, it's because he remembers buying the iPhone. He clearly remembers doing that, but he doesn't remember how he got his hair cut.
Yeah.
And, he's only gone for 6 days, unless he had like a really massive, did somebody feel that it was a particular urgency to cut his hair in that 6-day period? It's a detail to the story that is particularly strange, but I thought that was equally mysterious and a good one for me to kick off with.
Mickey thinks maybe he's a fan of Dude, Where's My Car? He said it's eerily similar. And Dan M thinks he just sneaked off to Vegas for a sneaky one, or Sacramento, and went full Hangover style.
The thing
you would think there would be, if he was wandering around California, they'd have like some CCTV footage of him or something, and be able to track his.
Well, you can look into it, but I think possibly there might be. But if you. I know the guys are probably only joking, but there was a massive search that went underway, on that ski resort where he went missing. There's no way that he would have risked pulling, as a captain in the firefighting force, he would never have risked putting similar people that work in the same line of work into that wasted effort, an extensive search. Because when he was found in California, the search was still underway. It was still in full effect. So yeah, and it's really. I again watched some of the news reports as they were coming out, and it's really interesting.
Yeah, Mickey summed it up, but he missed a step. So he got off the slopes, came across flagged down a trucker to get a lift. Trucker drugged him, kept it up for days until he got to California, and then dropped him off fear of getting caught. Except for in the middle of that, you've got to add, got him a haircut. Got him a haircut.
Yeah, man.
And then
Mickey, where does the haircut come in that theory? You got to always think of the haircut.
You got to think about the haircut. Yeah.
Yeah. No theory is valid unless there's some explanation for the haircut.
Super weird trucker.
Unless he was a super weird trucker. Yeah, I get what you're saying. A bit freaky, and there's plenty of those guys in the US. For anybody that's joining us from the US, we love you dearly.
And we love truck drivers as well.
Yeah, they serve
they do.
their countries very well.
Yes.
They work very hard.
Yes.
And diligent.
Thank you, truck drivers everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting one. Right, shall I get on with story 3? So,
yeah, let's go for it.
This is an 8-year-old girl this time in America. And we're going all the way back to June the 16th, 1946.
Wow.
And this 8-year-old called Catherine. She and 5 members of her Van Alst family arrived at Devil's Den State Park, which is also in Arkansas, just around the corner from Buffalo Creek, where we were last time. This is in the same area. So they unpacked in a camping site, and the kids wanted to head down to the creek and go for a swim. So the dad said, yes, okay. So they headed down to the creek, and in this creek, there's like a pool that gets deeper the closer to a dam, and there's a dam, a rocky dam that goes up, and then there's a small lake behind the dam, and the kids swim about in the creek at the bottom of the dam. It gets deeper towards the back of the creek, towards the bottom of the dam, so the kids tend to stay in the shallower end by the beach. The kids were all playing about in the water, and Catherine unfortunately headed out into the deeper end of the creek and got into a bit of trouble. And a lady who was on the side of the creek noticed Catherine was in trouble and went in and helped her out and took her to the side where the beach and, told her, if you're not a good swimmer, you should not go in the deep part of the creek, because it's not safe. And the dad noticed that something was going on with his daughter, and that she was talking to this stranger, this lady, and gestured over, and the lady was like, "It's okay, everything's all right. I'm just, warning her and making sure she's okay." So the dad said, "Oh, thank you for everything," and then warned Catherine, said, "Don't go in the deep side." And Catherine said, "Okay, well, I'm not going to go back in the water now because that kind of scared me. I'll just stay on the rocks." So she went climbing around the rocks at the bottom of the dam. So Dad split his attention between his sons playing in the shallow water and Catherine playing on the rocks. And he's looking from one to the other, making sure they're okay. And then he looks back to where Catherine was, and she's nowhere to be seen. They can't find her. So he starts shouting across the creek for Catherine. Everybody's shouting. All the people that are at the campsite start joining in. And then there's this big hunt. He asked the lady who was just talking to her, "Have you seen Catherine? You were just talking to her." She's like, "Oh, she was just right there." And she doesn't know where she's gone. And she's just disappeared. He checks with his sons in the water. They can't find her. So eventually they get everybody in the campsite involved in looking for her. And again, hundreds of people join the search. After 2 days of searching, they can't find her. So then the local authorities drain both the creek. They get pumps in. They drain both the creek and the reservoir to see if they'll find a body down the bottom. But they don't find anything in either bodies of water. And basically, she's considered gone. And then days go by. 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. And then after 6 days, 7 miles into the deepest part of the forest in that area, searchers come across a girl. Again, standing in the mouth of a cave. Do you want to get that?
No, sorry.
There's someone calling to say, "You're on YouTube."
Yeah.
Yeah, some searchers come across a girl standing in a cave, and they're calling out Catherine, and she's just wearing a swimsuit, and she's just standing there, and she just says, "Here I am." And they find her. Now, this 7 miles into the deepest part of the wilderness in Arkansas, they worked out, and it was the cave was up a hill. Past a boulder field, and to actually get there, they worked out she would have had to have walked over 30 miles. And she was barefoot and just wearing swimsuit bottoms, nothing else. She had nothing else on her, and she must have walked 30 miles. She didn't remember a thing. When asked later what happened, she said she remembered climbing on the rocks. She remembered getting into trouble in the water, remembered talking to the lady, she remembered climbing on the rocks, and then she remembered standing in the mouth of this cave with some people in front of her calling her name and just saying, "Here I am." That's it. I've actually got a picture. I've got a picture of her the day she was found. Bear with me a second.
So she was, when you said that she was, she remembers people saying hello or calling her name. So she remembers from where she was at the creek. And then her next memory is when the people had found her and were shouting her name.
6 days later. Yeah.
Wow.
7 miles into the wilderness, which what they say was about 30 miles by foot.
And this picture is when she was found?
This was when, yeah, that's a picture of her dad and her the day she was found. Yeah.
Yeah, but, and just to mention again, because you mentioned this was 1947.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, it was the 1946, 16th of June, 1946. She was again after like a week. She had been a week in the wilderness, in the middle of Arkansas, and was completely fine. Not, she didn't look underfed, underwatered. She may have lost a pound, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with her. Yeah, and she doesn't remember anything. Wow. They did say the searchers that found her said it was an eerie sight because she was just like stood there in a daze, and when they called out her name, she just said, "Here I am," like completely emotionless, not like oh thank God or anything. She just said, "Here I am," and then didn't say anything else and just went with them. So they said it was quite eerie, and even from this photo, she it's a bit of an eerie looking photo, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. It looks like one of those, when they say, "Oh, this kid's grown up with wolves" and stuff. And,
yeah. Or you expect it to come out of the television screen at you or something.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Handsome looking chap is down.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's like it's just strange. The wilderness in Arkansas is called the wilderness because by law, apart from park rangers, there's not allowed to be any cars or bikes or anything within the wilderness area, within the national parks.
Yeah.
It's not allowed any engine, or anything like that.
So that sort of precludes somebody like grabbing her and traveling by car or vehicle. I mean, Mickey's saying that is this Bigfoot hotspot. I'm thinking possibly abduction by a Bigfoot, fast moving through forest. Don't know how she could get there quickly.
Yeah, well, I mean, we can talk a little bit about where the missing 411 came from. I can't remember the name of the chap. What's the name of the chap?
Oh, what? Who does the documentaries?
Yeah, and wrote the books initially.
Oh gosh, I can't remember. Sorry, that's really bad when we're doing an episode about.
we had this all down last week.
Go on. Yeah. A lot of information.
David Philippedes. He's called David Philippedes.
Okay.
David Philippedes. He was a police officer, and then he turned investigator, and primarily started writing books about Bigfoot, about Sasquatches. That was his. After he left the police, he became a park ranger for a time, and from being a park ranger, he started writing books on the Bigfoot phenomenon. And it was investigating Bigfoots that he actually started investigating these missing cases, these missing people cases, because he was seeing it happen a lot in the parks around him and didn't think that it was getting the coverage from the government that he felt it deserved. So he started writing books and trying to generate media around it. So That's where these stories initially come from. So the fact that Mickey says, possibly Bigfoot hotspot, that's kind of where he hasn't gone there yet with the 411 books, but everybody's expecting that in the 411 series he'll get there eventually.
Well, yeah, I mean, definitely at the end of the second documentary, The Hunted, it was definitely leaning towards
it's starting to be implied,
what
isn't
Ben
it?
from the 401 Files would love, and the connection between Bigfoot and possible alien connection. I mean, the reason why I asked you to repeat the date is because you said it was 1946, and there was obviously something quite significant that happened in the history of America in 1947, so not long after this happened, and that was the significant supposed crash in Roswell. However, I was going to go on to something. You're an enthusiastic amateur scientist, Mark, so tell me this. Didn't Einstein have a theory of dimensions, or say that he believed that there was 4 dimensions? Or something like that?
No. I mean, there's the 4 dimensions that we can see, but like there's the dimension of time. There's like I think there's 14 dimensions in total. They worked it out. I don't know. You're gonna have to if you want to talk about that, you're gonna give me some time.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking about like space and time, and maybe what was 6 days to us was not 6 days to her.
Yes.
And also time and distance and space and things like that. So I'm not going to go fully with the alien connection, but there is plausible, to say that maybe she fell into another dimension.
Maybe
came out the other side.
Maybe if it is a Bigfoot hotspot, and I think it is, it could be like she was snatched by something. It could be something more common, like a guy on the campsite had her away without anybody realizing under their noses. Yeah.
But you say she doesn't recall anything, though. But
Nothing.
Again, children and trauma.
They repress. Yeah.
But here's another thing. So going more to the skeptical side, can you bring the picture back up, please?
Yep.
So, if for a minute we're to think that possibly this was all a hoax for some sort of attention and money, Dad does look a little bit happy about the whole situation. He's smiling in the picture, which is a bit odd considering
he's got his daughter back after a week.
Well, yeah, so maybe he wants to show
you're going to be happy.
But, why is he posing for the photo as well and things like that? So, it kind of makes me think that whether this was done for some publicity stunt, don't know.
Yeah.
That would be another thing to consider.
Mickey thinks it's another trucker.
Huh?
Mickey thinks it's another trucker.
Yeah, weird trucker. But look, we're going to start getting major complaints from truckers in a minute.
No, isn't another. He wants to know if he gets any points. He wants a blue Peter badge for solving the mystery. We could give him some Monte Zone points.
Yeah.
have one Monte Zone point.
Yeah, we're feeling generous. Have one.
Yeah. It's the only one we've ever given, so
Yeah, wear it with pride.
Yeah.
Yeah, what you because there's quite a few people with us in chat. What do you guys think about this one? Do you think it's something strange, or there's a better explanation that we haven't thought of, or do you think it's a hoax? Let us know what you think.
It's strange. It's no way an 8-year-old girl just wearing a swimsuit could have survived a whole week in the middle of the Arkansas wilderness by herself and come out unscratched and perfectly fine with no hint of dehydration or starvation or anything after walking 30 miles barefoot.
That's why
it's just not possible.
Was there any sign about like damage to her feet or anything like that? Did it say
no, she had
about that?
like like Haley, she had some scratches on her arms from walking through bushes.
See, that's what made me jump to where I was talking about space and time as well, because, again, that would, as weird as it sounds, it would explain a lot of things about why she had no malnutrition, why she didn't have blistered feet, etc. So, but again, some of that could have been avoided by her being transported from here to there by vehicle. So yeah.
Yeah, well, there's no vehicle. You couldn't get vehicles in there.
Exactly. Well, so that's,
you're talking 1946 vehicles as well.
It's omitted that. That one as well.
Yeah. So,
but a lot of it would be explained if it was a hoax.
Yeah.
Because they didn't think about making the realistic details look right.
So, what's your final story for us this evening, G?
Oh, it's not my final story.
You got two more, have you?
Yeah, I should have gone with the other one and said that it was a bit of a break. But I'm going to end with a story tonight that's not necessarily a missing 411 case.
Oh yes, of course. So we got one more missing 411, and then we've got the bonus,
the
bonus material.
Story. Yeah. Okay, so my next one, so just to throw in a little bit of a warning again, this story is slightly harrowing, and I've got some pictures to share as well. So if you are easily upset, we don't want anybody getting stressed. So yeah, just to give you a bit of a warning. So this one is a story about Jared Asadero. In 1999, a 3-year-old boy named Jared Asadero was living with his sister and father, Alan, at a resort Jared's dad worked at in the Comanche Wilderness, which is in the National Park of Colorado. A Christian singles group was staying at the resort, and one of the women in the group offered to take Alan's kids with them for a few hours to a local fish hatchery. They never asked Alan if they could take the children hiking as well, but they saw a sign for a nearby trail and decided at the last minute that they would go through the forest. The Christian singles were so involved in their own hikes that they lost track of Jared, and he wandered away from the group. 2 hikers in the area saw him walking alone, but assumed his parents must be nearby. After this, he was never seen again. In 2003, which was 4 years later, 2 hikers climbed up a very steep rock face, roughly about 550 feet above the trail. They found one child's tooth, a piece of skull, and Jared's clothes, which were fully intact. They had been taken off his body and turned inside out. There was one shoe. I think we've got some photographs of this. So I think there's a photograph of the tooth first.
Yeah, I'll bring up the tooth first. I brought up a picture of Jared, but the picture of the little boy, that was
yeah, I saw that.
That was Jared. And this is the picture of the tooth. Yeah, you can't quite see it's zoomed in, but it's actually on a log or in a log. It's resting on top of a sort of decaying log.
And there was one shoe which looked brand new. Now, why that's somehow it was perfectly preserved for those 4 years. So what's interesting about this one, just to point out, is that Colorado, although warm during the summer months, is, really cold and wintry and snowy during winter. So, when you think about a shoe out in the open, being exposed to those elements, we were talking off air, weren't we, Monte, where you were saying that, one winter, I think it was, you left some shoes out in the back garden, and even just then they were covered in mold and whatever. So
they were full of lichen, moss, bits of earth, and they were about. And this is just one winter season in outside my back door in Plymouth. 4 years, was it 4 years?
4 years, this trainer, but it looked brand new. And I'm sorry I didn't pull it, but there is a separate picture of where they found the shoe between these two rocks, and that's how they found it. So anyway, the area where his remains were found was far too difficult for a child to climb to by himself. As I said, the two hikers that climbed at the very steep rock face were professionally rock climbing, and it would have been an unnecessarily difficult location for an adult, potentially a kidnapper, to carry him. It would have been, almost near on impossible. It also doesn't line up with a bear or a cougar attack or a wild animal attack, because the clothes would have been ripped and covered in blood. And the other thing, if you didn't pick up on it earlier, is that the clothes were found inside out. So, bears and wild creatures wouldn't go to the effort of turning the clothes inside out. So yeah, he was never found. The Antero family are still haunted by the unanswered questions. But very, very sad case, but very, very strange and mysterious as well. I just want to go back. I don't, because what happened, there was a bit of a mix-up between me and Monte. Monte had looked into this case as well, and so he kindly gave it to me to talk about. But when you were looking into it, Monte, did you see? So the thing that I thought is, the two hikers that it said earlier, two hikers in the area saw him walking alone, but assumed his parents must be nearby. I was watching the guy. What did you say his name was? The guy who's done the Missing 411 series. What's his name? David Philippedes. I watched a documentary where David was, talking about this particular case, and he mentions in that video that the two hikers actually spoke to him, right, because Jared actually asked them, are there any bears around? And the hikers said no, because this area of Colorado isn't particularly known to have like a bear issue. So they had spoken to him. Now, regardless of whether they had spoken to him or not, it kind of seems strange to me. You imagine, put yourself in those shoes. I wouldn't even assume, if I'd seen a 3-year-old, and when you talk about a 3-year-old boy, you're talking about, quite a young child. If you saw them in the woods, in the wilderness by themselves, you wouldn't assume that they were with parents. You'd want to at least check. And, so when I originally read the story, and I just thought, well, did they see him from across a ravine or something? But no, they actually spoke to him. And, that was their perfect window of opportunity to go, where are your parents?
Yeah.
So that part of the story seems very strange to me.
Yeah.
Bit sus, yeah. Like, you wondered to yourself, how much did the, police investigate those two hikers, But then when you think about that as a potential theory or a potential option, that, it was human intervention into Jared's, disappearance, then why the trainer looking brand new?
Trainers, they found both of them.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, because you see it there in the picture. But, there's a couple of other things that are, just very, very mysterious about this one, but also a very, very sad story.
Just want to say hi to Katie Fitness. Katie Fitness is in the house. Good evening to you, sir. Yeah, and you mentioned the complete lack of blood on anything.
Yeah.
The fact that, it looks pretty terrible when you look at those clothes there laid out. But they said that all the evidence points to rodents eating it and birds picking at it to create nests. They found quite a lot of the thread of the trousers in birds' nests in the area. So all that damage was pretty much done with rodents and birds, and nothing had any blood on it, and it was inside out, which, looking at the quality of the shoes and the fact the clothes were inside out and there was no blood anywhere, it's completely suspicious.
Yeah, and we were talking about those two hikers, but also you got to factor in those group of single Christians that were at the campsite, and their eagerness to take help Alan by looking after their kids, and they took them off hiking when they didn't even check with their parents whether it was okay to take them off hiking. But again, you would assume, and I will probably be interested into looking into this in a little bit more depth, but you would assume that the police would have done a thorough investigation on these people and tried to look for evidence. But so there's part of me that's assuming that they've gone through that kind of rigmarole, and their involvement or their suspicion is being kind of cast out.
Yeah, so it's a very sad picture. Sorry about this, but very sad picture here of Alan. The only thing he has left of his son, and that's the top of his son's skull. And you can see that it's got a lot of square cuts missing out of it, where police forensic people have taken samples to check DNA and things like that. But that was the only thing that was found with the clothes, was the top of the skull there.
So again, if you guys are willing to comment, on this particularly sad one, and let us know what you think happened. It'd be really interesting to hear your thoughts as well. But yeah, that was probably the saddest of all. But very strange.
But he had a disability?
I can't recall.
I think he was hard of hearing.
Yes, he had a hearing aid, and the hearing aids were never found either.
No. So, yeah, it was... a lot of those commonality things that they see in some of these cases. That he was found by a boulder field. He was a disabled chap with hearing problems. Missing in a creek on a path. It's a lot of those things, but very, very sad story.
And you'd also just have to think about some of the other details in this case, like where those bits were found, like the tooth, etc., in a location which, again, is almost without professional equipment, and again, this was on a trail where you get regular people passing by. So if somebody was trying to, winch a child up a cliffside, there's a very good chance that they could have been seen or spotted by somebody. And, it wasn't accessible to like other wildlife that would explain how it got there. So again, there are some really very strange elements to this case.
Yeah. So there we go. That was our missing 411 stories for tonight. Mickey's asking whether he might have been hot. Was it warm where he disappeared? Could he have taken his clothes off himself because he was overheating? That's a good thought. Yeah, it's a good thought.
Yeah.
I think you would have kept your clothes with you, though, and put them on at night, because it would still get cold at night, wouldn't it?
Well, he must have been fairly decent size 3-year-old, because those trainers look fairly big.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah. But again, it's photographs. You can't really get a sense of scale. But yeah.
I've got a photo where you could get a sense of scale, because I've got it.
Yeah, that's why it's a shame that I didn't show the one where it's in the rock, because it actually looks like an adult shoe.
I think I've got it where it's his dad stood in front of it, because his dad's been campaigning to find out more since it happened, and
which then again also would make you assume that the the officials, the justice system had investigated any people that were involved in this case in quite a bit of detail and, remove them from the firing line, as it were, because else he would probably be campaigning for something else.
Yeah, so that's a sense of scale there, so you can see the items of
No,
clothing.
I suppose it is. Yeah.
So they are, reasonably small. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so
bonus story. we
Yeah.
should have put that story in the middle of our other stories. I should have ended with the Catherine story and started off with the Haley one and had your one in the middle, so we could have ended on one where they survived and all was well.
Yeah. Unfortunately, this one. So this isn't a missing 411. I wanted to, because originally the whole episode was called The Missing, not Missing 411, and we were talking, as Monty mentioned, about Amelia Earhart on the original attempt on this stream and Jimmy Hoffa. And so one of the stories that I wanted to bring to the show was probably one of, if not the a case with the most people going missing all at the same time. And that's the Malaysia Airline Flight 370. So I don't know if Dan's still on and still with us, but when I was messaging him last week when he was racing back from the airport, I said, yeah, we're covering things like the Malaysia flight. And he was like, oh, you mean the one that got shot down by Russians? And I was like, no, that's a different flight. So that there's no confusion, I'm going to be telling you the story about Malaysia Airline Flight 370. However, after this incident, just about, I think it was 3 or 4 months after, Malaysia Airline Flight 17 did get shot down by Russians, but that was a completely different flight. So it was a bad year for Malaysia Airlines. They actually ended up going into administration and had to be absorbed by the Malaysian government as a result. But this was 4 months earlier, and this is Malaysia Airline Flight 370. So it was a scheduled international passenger flight operated by, and it wasn't that long ago, so most of you might still remember this story. If you wouldn't mind bringing up the artist impression picture that I shared with you, Monty, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
So it was a scheduled international passenger flight operated by Malaysia Airlines that disappeared on the 8th of March 2014 while flying from Kuala Lumpur International Airport to its planned destination of Beijing Capital International Airport. The crew of the Boeing 77 aircraft last communicated with air traffic control around 38 minutes after takeoff when the flight was over the South China Sea. The aircraft was lost from ATC radar screens minutes later, but was tracked by military radar for another hour, deviating westwards from its planned flight path, crossing the Malaya Peninsula and the Andaman Sea. It left radar range 200 nautical miles northwest of Penang Island in northwestern peninsula of Malaysia. With all 227 passengers and 12 crew aboard presumed dead, the disappearance of Flight 370 was the deadliest incident involving a Boeing 777 and the deadliest of Malaysia Airlines history until it was surpassed in both regards by the Malaysia Airlines Flight 17. Which was shot down while flying over conflict-stricken eastern Ukraine 4 months later. The combined loss caused significant financial problems for Malaysia Airlines, which was renationalized by the Malaysian government in December 2014. So the search for the missing airplane, which became the most expensive in aviation history, I think before that it was, and this is why it's interesting, because before that I think it was Amelia Earhart, possibly, but it was the most expensive in aviation history, focused initially on the South China Sea and the Andaman Sea. Am I pronouncing that right?
I don't know.
Before analysis of the aircraft's automated communications with Inmarsat satellite indicated a possible crash site somewhere in the southern Indian Ocean. The lack of official information in the days immediately after the disappearance prompted fierce criticism of the Chinese public, particularly from relatives of the passengers, as most people on board the Flight 370 were from Chinese origin. Several pieces of marine debris confirmed to be from the aircraft washed ashore in the Western Indian Ocean during 2015 and 2016, so a year and 2 years later. After a 3-year search across 120,000 square kilometers, which is 46,000 square miles, of ocean failed to locate the aircraft, the Joint Agency Coordination Center headed the operation, suspending their activities in January 2017. From then on, it was picked up by private contractors. There was a private company called Ocean Infinity that wanted to have a stab at trying to find this Malaysian flight, but that ended without success after 6 months, and they struggled because they were private. They struggled with funding, but I think they went into it really confident that they were going to find it because at that time they had a pretty solid lead. Relying mostly on analysis of data from the Inmarsat satellite with which the aircraft last communicated, the Australian Transport Safety Bureau proposed initially a hypoxia event was the most likely cause given the available evidence, although there's not been any consensus concerning the theory amongst investigators. At various stages of the investigation, possible hijacking scenarios were considered, including crew involvement. There's quite a big theory, I think, of there was a pilot on board that they think might have been suicidal, or they've made some sort of connections that
he had mental health issues or something.
Yeah. In the absence of a definitive cause of disappearance, air transport industry safety recommendations and regulations citing Flight 370 have been intended mostly to prevent a repetition of the circumstances associated with the loss. These include the increased battery life on underwater locator beacons, because an important thing to point out is that all flights, most people know that flights have black boxes, but they also have these underwater locator beacons. And the search for the Malaysian flight was almost instantaneous with search and rescue, but yet they didn't find any underwater beacon. That would be initially what should have happened. So, it's a bit like anything like the JFK incidents. There was a committee put together to come up with a report on this and then recommendations following that report. And one of them was that they increased the battery life of the underwater locator beacons, because they're assuming that, okay, we didn't locate it, so therefore the battery must have died. Lengthening the recording times of flight data recorders and cockpit voice recorders, and new standards for aircraft position and reporting over open ocean. But something that wasn't in the stuff that I took off, I'm pretty sure I read it somewhere, and it's one of the more interesting things for me about this case, is that the flight disappeared off of radar for a full 18 minutes.
Wow.
So I was pointing out earlier that they were initially tracking it from hold on, let me find it in my notes. So they were originally tracking it from somewhere, and then another radar center, I think it was a military radar center, then picked it up and reported, and that's when they were reporting that it was going off course. But it went totally blind on any radar for 18 minutes. There's a guy, so, the investigation into this whole situation, because, other than a couple of fragments of the plane that, as I said, washed up on the southern Indian Ocean 2 years later, it's still not been found. And there's loads of different theories that kick about and online. And there's this one guy that's, one of the things that's been really popular over the last decade is you get these guys who really spend a lot of time going through Google Earth. If you wouldn't mind bringing up that other picture that I shared with you.
Yeah.
And they're looking for things and they zoom in on it. And there's this one guy who reckons that he's found somewhere on Google Earth that indicates that there's an image that he's suggesting is Flight 370 underneath the ocean. And I took a picture of that to share with you guys. But me personally, I know you can see like an outline or a shape, but I don't think it's conclusive. I think that some of that could be caused by the natural water pattern. But
I think definitely that just looks like waves to me.
Yeah. So there's a lot of people that are jumping. It's a big. It's almost like a treasure hunt now. It's become, which is a bit, sad considering there was a lot of loss of life on this one. But
I mean, you look at that picture there, right? You imagine that we were on this beach, right? That's not far out to where you go swimming, because this is at the point where the waves start crashing. I mean, it depends on how steep but the incline of the sand doesn't look particularly massive. So that's within like swimming distance. If there was a massive 777 crash there, you'd notice. It's just the pattern of the waves on the. It doesn't look that deep at all.
Yeah, I mean, let us know what you guys think. But the other thing that I mentioned is that during the years that have passed since 2014, and a lot of different agencies have investigated this, and throughout that process, a few people have come forward that were in and around the areas on the ocean where Flight 370 was meant to have gone missing. One of those people was a British solo female sailor. And she states that at one time she recalls seeing what looked like a ball of fire, flying across the distance, etc. But there's part of me that when I was reading all these stories, and she's not the only one, there's a couple of other things. I think there's one guy who was on a fishing trawler ship, and he said and they were out in the Indian Ocean doing commercial fishing, and he said he saw something. But I'm now thinking that these people, that they came forward quite a bit of time after the event, and maybe they're just thinking that they did, and I don't know. It doesn't sound enough conclusive, but the flight has never been found.
No. Do you know how much the search effort has cost in total? You said it's like the most expensive search in history. Have you got any figures with that?
No, I haven't.
Because I think at the time with I was going to say Dale Earhart. It's a NASCAR driver. Amelia Earhart, not Dale. With Amelia Earhart, I think the initial search and rescue operation cost I think something like $6.5 million, which at the time was a massive sum of money. So yeah, I was just wondering if we had any sort of equivalent.
What I can say is that obviously a lot of the first initial investigations and searches, a huge part of it was funded by the Malaysian Airlines and the official aviation of Asia. But that is, they spent so much money in that search process that's one of the reasons why, Malaysian Airlines had to fold and go into administration, because it had been so costly for them. So I would estimate, or guess, I should say, that it was probably over. Oh, hold on. Oh, Mickey's just, thank you very much, Mickey. Mickey's just put in 133 million before it was suspended in January 2017 after 1,046 days. And as I said to you, after 2017 was when Ocean Infinity, a company, took up the mantle on a privately funded project. And as I said, because if they had found it, it would have created a great buzz around Ocean Infinity and the equipment that they were testing and using. So they were excited and they thought that they could find it. And after 6 months, they were getting nowhere with it, so that collapsed in on itself. So that would have been even more money. So yeah, a lot of money.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, a bit of a mysterious one. So what do you guys think happened? But there's a lot, like you could quite easily say, well, it went down in the ocean. Okay, so why did it disappear from radar for 18 minutes? There is, an element where you could say, well, maybe they went too high or too low for that period of time. That's why I was showing the picture where it's showing them right above the water, because a lot of these radar systems that airlines use, they only operate under a certain height. So if you go below that line, you're out of radar signal. So, but for a massive Boeing 77 to stay that low for that duration of time is pretty, would be pretty hard to happen without people seeing it, even on the Indian Ocean.
That's what like stealth fighters and like Apache helicopters do, don't they? When they're approaching a target, they stay close to the ground, and so that they can't be seen by radar.
And LJ's put something in the comments.
He thinks I think it's probably the initial search was around 20 to 30 million.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, good guess though. It's good.
So it's another one of those cases as well where you could go, okay, I think this is what happened, but then there's a kink in the story that wouldn't explain that. Do you know what I mean? So if it went into the ocean, they've used a lot of specialized equipment to scan the ocean, and they can pick these things up. They don't physically have to get divers in the water, and they can use scanning equipment. And again, they work very methodically in grid patterns to make sure that they've covered everything. And there's things like that locator beacon, underwater beacon, that should have been working, so that didn't work. There's a lot of things that just don't add up about this case that make it very, very strange, besides the fact that it's still unfound.
Well, apparently some parts of it have been found.
That's the bits that washed up.
The bits that washed up, yeah. But it's assumed that it's parts of the aircraft. They can't, I mean, it's assumed. Like, they found some suitcases. They assume it came from the flight. They found a flaperon.
Yeah, it's one of the things that sit on the wings, isn't it?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of items like that they found. But tell you what, it puts Amelia Earhart's disappearance into context. If she can disappear in, what was it, 1936 or something?
36, wasn't it? Yeah.
If she can disappear in 1936 in a small 2-man plane.
Wasn't she flying over a similar area?
It was in the Pacific. Well, this is more like the Indian Ocean.
The Indian Ocean, yeah.
Same side of the planet.
Same side of the equator, I guess.
If she, because I was like, how can she possibly disappear and nobody ever find her? But if in like 2017 or 2015, no, what is it? It was, I don't know, 2014, I think.
2017. It went missing in 2014.
Yeah.
Search.
If a 777, one of the most sophisticated airlines that humans have ever invented, with hundreds of people on board, can disappear in 2014, Amelia Earhart didn't stand a chance. Bless her.
I mean, I was talking to somebody the other day about something completely different, but there was a really interesting point because I Googled this myself for this topic of conversation that I was having with a friend. But I wanted to Google how much of the Earth's oceans have been explored, and it still stands at 5% underwater. So there's still 95% of the ocean that we haven't explored yet, which is massive. So there is an element where you say, okay, well, if it's gone down in the ocean, there's a, you know, it's an expansive area, place, and things can happen. But, you know, again, you have to add up some of the other things that should have naturally, like you say, is a really high-tech piece of aircraft, you know, in terms of its technology and the things that it could do. So it's a bit crazy that it just, you know, fell off the face of the earth and no sign of it.
Yeah.
But maybe one day somebody will discover it. Who knows?
Maybe.
But it's given me an idea, because we've been talking about Amelia Earhart and stuff like that. Maybe we could do a Monte Zone on the Bermuda Triangle and all the stuff that's happening.
Yeah, that's definitely a topic to cover. Yeah,
there's a couple of triangles as well. I think there's another one that's pretty popular.
Yeah, there's several spots.
So plenty of content to talk about there and bring to you guys into the Monte Zone.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have nightmares tonight, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's another one of these cases, like all the cases tonight, where we'll probably never know exactly what happened to that flight.
Were you about to just ask me what my thoughts were?
Yeah, I was going to say, what do you think? Do you think a rift opened up and they were all rescued from people from the future, and then the airplane was allowed to crash?
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't have even a theory as to what my thoughts are. All I can say is that a couple of the ones that are out there solidly, I don't feel add up. So like the one with the pilot who had mental health issues and you know, wanted to commit suicide, and he took the whole flight with him. You know, that doesn't add up to me, because one, there would have been a fight for control of the flight, things would have been going on, people would have been able to keep, you know, if he had a gun held to certain people, there's still people on the flight. This is 2014. So there's still people on the flight with mobile phones who would have been able to phone friends and family, unless it was a group of hijackers, where if it was a group of hijackers, then that gets away from this one guy and the suicide idea. So maybe it was hijackers. But then if it was hijackers, again, you keep hitting these walls, because if it was hijackers, okay, but why is the flight not being found? Like, where's the airplane gone? You know, and why didn't they? You know, so I don't have a theory. All I have is feelings that certain explanations don't add up to me. What do you think?
I don't know. I think, yeah, I think. I'm wondering, looking at the co-pilot case, I think that has some weight to it. Something bad happened on that plane. Yeah, I was making a joke quoting a film called Millennium.
Millennium.
Yeah, Millennium. It's like an old film from the 1980s. I think it was starred. I can't remember. Was it Chris Christopherson? I don't remember. But it was about people in the future where they can't procreate anymore, but they've invented time travel, and it's like a dystopian future. But they open up.
They kidnap people from the past.
Yeah, they know airplanes that are about to crash, so they kidnap all the people off the airplane before it crashes, and then replaces the people on the planes with dead people from their time, so that there's still corpses on board. And
that would be massively interesting when you think about it, because if in their timeline, if that flight had crashed in the Indian Ocean, so they're going, okay, well, these people were going to die anyway, so we'll take them, and then that explains the mystery of why the flight was never found. But a bit of a crazy one there, Monte.
Yeah. Okay, so yes, that's our. So Mickey says it's sad, and they never pinpointed the black boxes.
No,
neither of them.
And again, that's something that should have been able to happen. So, you know, again, one of the big mysteries of this whole thing. So yeah,
very strange.
So the next Monte show, Monte Zone, we are potentially planning to bring to you an episode about haunting and ghosts.
Yes. This will be our first ghost episode.
Our first venture into really the paranormal.
Yeah.
So Monty's been preparing himself on this one by rewatching X-Files.
I have. Yeah. we are on season 2 now.
Cool. And I should be able to, I'm planning on uploading another G Stars Vault to the Facebook page this week, and obviously drop it on the YouTube channel as well. So please check that out and continue to help us reach that 100 subscriber mark by just helping spread the word of the Monte Zone on your social media channels. That would be awesome. And it would be great just to hit that first milestone of 100 subscribers.
Yeah, absolutely.
But don't have nightmares tonight, guys.
No. And if you want to talk to us further, please feel free to join us on the Facebook group for a chat on the subject, or please comment away in the comments in this video after it's gone up. But thank you, G-Star, for joining me this evening.
Always a pleasure.
And join us then in 2 weeks' time for our stroll into the paranormal and the ghosts. Yes. So we will talk to you then. So cheers, everyone.
See you later, guys.
Good night.